Okay, so I've arrived at a point where I've determined that this pin is the one that needs to be removed, and that will leave me with an internal.
So this video is going to be divided into two parts. The first part with the counterfeit tool, and the second part where you're about to see the completion. Very quickly, the tool I initially used in the first part of the video was advertised as an RK chain tool. It turns out, through some research after I tried to use it and it would not work properly, that it was a counterfeit. It was returned to Amazon, I got my refund, and now I've got a proper DID chain tool. So, having explained that, we will continue.
And that will leave me with an internal link, a gray link. I've already installed the tool on here with the proper fitting in the back. This is an RK chain tool, but a lot of them work all very similar. And what's going to happen here is there's a pin that goes through, and it's going to move in this direction as I tighten it, and it's going to push that pin out. Now, I could help this process along by taking a grinder and grinding some of the quad stake rivet head, okay, off so that it pushes through easier. But I'm going to put this tool to the test and see how well it pushes a pin through. Okay, so I tried the method that the RK people say to use for the breaker. It would be easier to do it off the bike. So I'm going to resort to grinding the head down a bit. So that should allow that pin to go through. And I can feel now that the pin has gone through. And I'm just going to keep turning this until that pin is driven right out. Now you can put the chain breaker in there. I can turn now and I can see the pin coming out the other side. You can put these chain brakes in a vise. If you're careful the way you clamp it down. And there's the pin that just come out. Okay, so we can loosen this whole affair off. And there is our broken chain. There are our O-rings off each side of that pin. Okay, and that's why they call this an O-ring chain, because basically O-rings in there seal in the lubricant for each of the pins. And there is our fresh new end, gray link, that we will use the master link to rivet to the other gray end. Okay, you've got your master link. You put two O-rings, as you can see, at the base of your side plate with your pins. And then you're going to use this grease that they give you, and you're going to cover them liberally with this grease. And you're going to want to make sure you get it both on the O-rings and the pins. And then I'll show you what to do with the remaining grease and the side plate on the chain in a moment. Okay, so we take our master link. Make sure both O-rings are still on and greased up. The pins are greased up, and we come in from the back side. Okay. And we go in one and then the other. Again, guarantee those O-rings are there, and then press that firmly in towards yourself. The next thing we do is take two more of the O-rings and we place them on here like this. And then we're going to get ourselves a little more grease out of this little tiny pack. And they don't spare much grease when they give you that grease, but I'm not sure what the grease is. It looks like a waterproof lithium. I don't doubt that you could use the same thing, but please don't take my word for it in case I'm wrong and there's a chemistry issue with the two greases. But again, putting as much of that grease out of that little packet here that I'm squeezing out as we can get out. And the more you get on there, the easier this is, because the grease tends to hold the O-rings in place for the next step. And that's about all I can get on there. So obviously the next thing that happens here is your side plate goes on. Now you're not going to press it on with your fingers, okay? It may stay on there just like that for you, but I'll show you what has to happen next. Okay, so what we have to do next is we have to use the chain tool, and we have to have the proper plate first of all that goes in to the main bolt. This plate is meant for rivet links. It's a shallow cutout right here, as opposed to the other plate that comes with this riveter or this tool, which has a deeper cutout. And the reason for the deeper cutout is because the pins are longer on the other one, because they have to have a little more length on a clip length to allow for the plate and for the clip to go over into their notches. So we want the shallow plate. What we do is we put this over our master link. And I'm going to change the camera angle here in a second. But essentially what we want this to do is to clamp down on the link. And then we tighten that down to basically press the plate onto the pins. And once you get this tool aligned, and you got to make sure it is aligned and the groove in your pressing plate is over top of the holes where your pins are going to come through, because you don't want to do anything to those pins as of yet. You just want to press the plate down. And you use a 17 mil, which I'm using just outside of the shot here. I'm hanging on to the handle of the tool. And just outside of the shot at the bottom here, I'm using the 17 mil. And I'll just zoom out a bit in a second here. But for now, I'm zoomed in to show you that I'm tightening that plate. Now, you don't want to over tighten, because if you press that plate too far on over those studs, you can distort the entire length that you're working on and cause some issues. You just want to nicely start, if you can see in there, you just want to nicely start to compress the O-rings, and you'll feel some resistance. And I just felt it there, and I back off just a hair, and I'm just going to loosen it off now, actually, and take it right off. So what you see now is you see the plate's been pressed on, and I've got two quite clearly defined ends of pins that I'm going to put another part of the tool into this tool. All right, and what it will be is it'll go in here and it will sit in there, and what it does is you tighten it down now onto the heads of these, and it basically rounds them over and makes a rivet head out of them. It peens them over, and that's the next step in this process. So what we do now is we put two different pieces. We put a tail piece and a piece that peens over the head of the pin, and you can just nicely see the one piece that's inserted into the tool here. It has a little dimple, more like a nipple. It sticks out and it fits into the hole right there. And I'm on the bottom rivet right now. The tail piece in the back end right now is critical because it does have what is more accurately known as a dimple to accommodate the rivet that's already there. And we're putting most of the pressure on the back side on the side plate, but also the pin too, to press the pin head down. And there's a dimple in the tail piece, which I'll show you in some cutaway shots here. The measurement and the most accurate way to determine if your flare is what they call it, and you can look it up on the DID website, but right now I'm putting the calipers over that unflared head and I'm getting about 0.199. This, and that's in inches. They say that you want to be about let me just look at it here. They say for a VX2 chain, they're looking for 0.217 to 0.228. And all that is a measurement of this flare when it's sufficient enough that they feel it's going to hold your chain on, hold the link on. So as we crank down on this rivet with our 17 mil, we're going to slowly flare it out. And one thing I wanted to make note of, you're best to use a combination wrench. You can put a socket on these chain tools. However, most socket wrenches, most ratchets are not going to give you the leverage you need. A nice long 17 and 14 mil wrench are what you're looking for here. And we're just going to tighten this down until we start to get a fair amount of resistance, because we're flaring that head. And you can see it start to flare somewhat. I'm getting a fair amount of resistance there, so I'm going to back this off and take the tool off, and we'll have a look at what we've done to that head. Now if I take a measurement of that head now, that head is now 0.2035, and I said we need a minimum of 0.217 to 228. So we got a bit of flaring to go yet. I'm not going to bore the hell out of you by flaring more of these. I'm going to get both of them flared up, give you a final measurement, and we'll be back. Okay, so here's the DID tool. It's significantly different than the other designs. Doesn't have a handle. You use a 27 mil to hold it, box end, and a 19 mil box or a socket to turn your main screw. There's your removable pin. This is obviously to push out a pin to remove a chain or break a chain. This is the end that's used to rivet the chain. The big difference with this design is that it's not a U-shaped body. This fully encompasses the chain. So in other words, it pulls against itself, okay, in this fashion. And I actually bent the other one, and it's a good thing I didn't screw up my new chain. This link, master link, is actually compressed just a hair more than it should be, than the rest of the links, because the tool I had was a counterfeit and it was not flaring the tips of the pins properly. This tool will. So we're going to move on from here, and we are going to properly flare the pins on this DID chain. With the DID tool, there are two positions. There's an A and a B. And you can see this in a number of other videos. I caution you watching some videos though. I came across one the other day where they simply pressed the side plate of the chain master link on and didn't rivet the pin heads. And he said that's the way you do it. Scary. Anyway, Position B is the position you want to have this tool in when it's on the chain. So the whole idea is that you put this around the chain. Position B. There is a indentation on the back side for the pin on the back side, and then you simply tighten this down. Now, let me show you this part. This is the pin. All the parts on this tool are replaceable except for the main body piece. This pin, I might get a spare, but it goes inside the tool there. Okay? Put this back on, and again, it can be an A. There's a little detent ball on the inside right there. So you want to have it in position B. All right, line up with your, I'm going to do the left pin first. We tighten this affair down, and you want to make sure that the center of that pin is right on the end of the link, or the pin, I'm sorry. 27 mil to hold the tool, 19 to tighten. And it's a little cramped doing this when you've got a camera and stuff in the way. I'm just going to stop and loosen this off for a sec. Now, I can measure this with a, but that's nowhere near being flared enough yet, I can tell. You can use a vernier, a caliper, to measure the size of the head. Basically, they call for about 0.5 to 0.7 millimeters above the regular pin diameter. All right, so I'm working on the front pin of the master link, position B on the tool. I've given this about 3 turns of the flat. So in other words, I've turned about 3 flats on the adjustment. I'm just going to back it off. Let's just see where we're at here. Okay, so I can definitely see a nice flare there now on that pin. Okay, and if we take the pin itself, like I said before, and you can put it and touch it against the side plate, I got a little bit more to go on that one. And then I'll show you a measurement with the caliper in a moment. So I gave it about another 1.5 flats on the front one here. The whole idea here, without using a caliper to measure the flare of the head, is that if you put this on here, which is your pin, and you've got very little or no rocking, it means that the flat portion here, okay, is against the side plate. And I've got very little movement there. When the dimple is in the head of the pin, you know, I could probably go another 1/2 flat. The back one, I've got more play. So I can actually compress it, or flare it, I should say, a little more, because when it's in there, you can see I haven't got the flat flush against there. So I'm going to do a little more tweak to the back one now, and then, as promised, I'll show you the caliper measurement. What I'm trying to show you here, and the good old iPhone is great, but it doesn't quite focus as closely, but right in the center of your screen, I've got hands snugged down on top of my rivet head, okay?
And again, making sure that the back side of this piece is centered and the other side of the pin is firmly in its notch. That way you're getting your tightening squared down on the top of the rivet head. I'm just going to show you a quick tip. Using this tool, they say to keep your two wrenches. This is a 27 that holds the body of the tool. This is a 19 that adjusts, tighten, loosen. To keep them within 30 degrees of each other makes things a lot easier. The reason why is because you can get a hold of both of them, and for the purposes of loosening off, it's a matter of just squeezing the handles and away you go. Okay. Okay, so just to verify, because I tend to be anal about this stuff, I'm just going to put calipers on it, each pin. And I've got 5, 6, 7 on the back pin. And 5, 7, 6 on the front pin. And that's good to go. That's properly flared rivet heads. So this has been a bit of an adventure because of well, let's just chalk it up to crappy tools. That first item that I got was on Amazon.ca, and like I said, they called it an arcade chain tool. I got it, tried to use it, no go. Immediately sent it back, and that's all well and fine. This tool, absolutely fantastic. No doubt about it that this is the way to go. I'm sure the genuine arcade tool works well, and there's a number of other third-party kind of stuff out there, if you want to call it that, that probably works well too. But the idea that this pulls on both sides of the chain evenly against itself just works. So once you're done putting your link in your chain, don't forget to check the chain tension. You want about 20 to 30 millimeters. Make sure you go over everything. Make sure that your axle bolts are all tight. Make sure your chain and your back wheel are in alignment. Make sure you haven't left any tools laying inside the bike, on the bike, anywhere near the bike, whatever. Make sure you clean up. I'm big on that kind of stuff, because heading out on the street and a socket wrench or something that was sitting on the bike or sitting on top of the swing arm is now missing from your set. Not fun. Eye protection, I mentioned earlier about why I didn't wear hand protection, because it's difficult to run the iPhone. So now I get to ride it and see just how well that new cush drive and that new DID chain are going to work. And I suspect it'll be a little smoother than the experience before. Thanks for watching. I assume no responsibility for whatever you people do. Like I said, there's a ton of videos out there covering this topic. I hope I've maybe showed you something that's a little different or a little new or is a little more helpful. But also be aware of some of the videos, like the one I mentioned earlier, where they just merely pressed the side plate onto the master link and called it a day. That was down in Southeast Asia, and I suspect there's probably a lot of disgruntled people with some chains flying off their bikes. Cheers.